What do you think has been one of the most challenging things about marriage?
Communication. Easy.
Okay. Okay.
I feel like with each kid, you kind of you feel yourself losing a little bit of control.
I would even say, like, on this side of it, sort of can create like a cynicism toward other churches. Like, it's kind of like when you see
Like,
behind,
what's going on in the background of this place?
Well, for anybody who's new here, welcome to Church with Chris. I'm so glad you're here. I am here with what will be undoubtedly my favorite and best guest on the show. This is my wife, Dr. Bria Scott.
Don't do that. Please don't do
Welcome.
that. I don't.
I just did it.
Okay.
I could cut it out, but I'm not going to.
Okay.
You are a doctor.
Yes.
I am so honored that my wife would join us tonight, and we're just going to talk about all kinds of stuff that we are not masters at, and I want to dig into a little bit of kind of what makes you tick and why you are the way that you are. And that sounds mean, doesn't it?
Kind of.
No, I don't mean it to be mean. Yeah, we're still going here.
Why are you that way?
Why are you the way that you are? Well, so why don't you explain how we met, first of all?
Okay. No, my question, do I look at you? Do I look at the camera? Okay. So we met in high school. I'm not sure exactly what grade. Do you know?
I don't know.
Okay. It was before we started dating.
Yeah, for a second I thought that was a really obvious answer, and then I was like, no, that's
No, I don't.
no. We started dating when I was a senior.
Correct.
Very into senior year.
Yes.
You were a junior.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So we met at youth group through our church, CCC here in Columbus. I think at the time that we met, we were both dating other people. Yes.
You were dating the pastor's son, and I wasn't having that. Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
But that didn't last long.
Yeah, it didn't last long.
No.
So yeah, you guys came to that church in, well, I don't know what year, but when you were maybe a
Early high school.
sophomore.
Yes.
Sophomore in high school.
Mm-hmm.
I had grown up at CCC, so, much love to all my CCC folk. And, church was awesome to me and my family, and still great people there. Love the church, love their ministries. And then, so you guys came from kind of helping start a church, right, in town.
Yes.
So you had some experience, at least your parents, with kind of the whole planning a church situation, right?
Yes.
So was that overall like a good or bad situation, you think? As far as like what you remember, I don't mean like what are the results of it,
Right.
But
Yeah, there was a lot of like background stuff that I'm sure we didn't see as kids, but I don't have bad memories from it. Yeah. It was, we as kids were kept out of it a lot. Like the whole beginning stages and everything. I just remember going to like our youth group there at the church, and it was like maybe 5 kids all around the same age, just basically the launch team's children. It was fine. It was fine.
It was fine.
Yeah.
But you eventually made your way to CCC.
Yes.
Your family thought that was just a better situation overall for
Yes.
the youth, probably, like for you guys.
That was
right?
probably one of the main reasons that my parents landed at CCC, was just that they'd heard about what a great youth group the church had.
Yeah, and so I remember the first time I saw you, and I'm not just saying this. I was thinking about this earlier because you're kind of thinking about like what are we going to talk about? What are you gonna ask and all that kind of stuff. I thought the same thing then that I think every time I see you now, and you can ask my good friend Michael Riles about this. Anybody ask Michael? The first thing I said was, "Dude, she is fine. She is so fine," and I told him, I was like, "I'm gonna marry that girl someday." Now, in hindsight, that was really, really immature because, like, why would you marry somebody just because they're pretty, right?
Right.
Not the best. Yeah, not the best idea to just go off of that, right? But yeah, in getting to know you, you know, you were a junior, I was a senior, started dating each other. The rest is history. And
But so here's this. After you first tried to like talk to me, did you still have that confidence of I'm going to marry this girl? Because I doubt it.
I don't even know if I ever talked to you when you had a boyfriend. Maybe I did, but I don't.
But even
I
if
knew
I
you
didn't,
through, so I had started hanging out with your friends from school.
Right.
A lot of your friends from school.
right,
And
not in the church scene.
yeah, not in the church scene. But then that was kind of a whole different, I guess I learned about you through other people. That's what it was. Because we would start talking about you, and, you know, people would talk about how great you were and how sweet you were and all this stuff.
But
so
when you
kinda,
first,
when I first met you, no, I was
Did you
very
think I was-
discouraged. I did not think it was going to happen. It wasn't because you were like mean. You know, just kind of more closed off.
Mm-hmm.
You and your sister, you and Haley, were both very intimidating because you were always together, and it was kind of like, I can't tell if they want to be here or not. These are those chicks whose parents make them come to youth group. That's kind of what I thought. Realized that wasn't the case, you know, but
it's a natural RBF.
what would you? It was the natural RBF.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Google that. Don't Google that.
Don't Google it.
But yeah, so I just fell in love with you, all of you, eventually, right? So there were a couple years in college that we dated. My first couple years of college, and then didn't date for a couple years, and then ended up getting back together. I think I decided, and I don't know, maybe you felt this way too. The more and more I thought about our future, like what my future looked like, the less and less I could picture it without you. And that was kind of like the deciding factor for me. I think when I was like, no, I love this girl. I want to give her like my whole life. And you maybe felt the same? Do you feel
Yeah.
the same? Yeah.
Yeah, I think that during the time that we had broken up, especially we went about like 9 months, I want to say, without really speaking after we broke up. But then I think towards the end of that, I would just kind of constantly pray, like, if this isn't meant to be, then please get this guy out of my head. Because that wasn't happening, and it really sucked.
Did you date other people while we weren't together?
I didn't have any like boyfriends.
But did you go on dates with other people?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
How many?
I don't know. Not very many.
All right.
Did you?
I'm sure you had options. That's all I'm saying. I'm sure you had the opportunities.
Yeah.
No. I don't think I could. I honestly don't think I could think of one girl that I went on.
But our circumstances were kind of different too. Like, I don't know how easy it was to go on dates at your school.
At a Bible
Yeah.
college. No, it was fine. No, it was fine.
Okay.
Yeah, you could go anywhere and do whatever.
Okay.
You couldn't like walk on the same sidewalk as a girl, but no, I'm just kidding. That's a joke. That's a joke.
Hardly.
No, it was. No, it wasn't that strict. It's like you could go somewhere with people, but no, I didn't. Yeah, so I went to a different college. I guess we skipped that part. I went to Baptist Bible College in Springfield, Missouri, my 3rd, 4th, and 5th year of college. It was tough because not a lot of stuff transferred there, so I had to go 3rd year. And the curriculum was just way different. It was like going from like communication stuff at Big Ten schools to like only Bible stuff, and yeah, so I had a lot of different stuff to catch up on, and yeah, I guess the opportunity presented itself to have like the distance, right? Like once I decided I was going to school there, the distance made that probably more palatable for a while, and then when we ended up getting back together, I still had a year out there, right?
2.
1.
and a half.
We weren't dating for 2 years. So
Okay.
I don't know. It was at least a year
Okay.
for sure. So come back. We ended up getting married in 2014. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. I always know it's 2014 or 2015. 2014. And we have, fast forward, we have 3 beautiful children, Perry, Parker, Piper. And yeah, we are fools for naming our kids
Yes.
things that are that close, but they're very beautiful names. People often say to me, so, "Oh, what is the significance of those names?" And it must be something in the Bible. And it's like, nope. They're just pretty names. But yeah, the all P's is kind of, we did that to ourselves. So I guess to fast forward for you, the first year that we were married was Bria's second year of dental school.
Mm-hmm.
So we weren't kidding. She's a dentist. She's a doctor. And yeah, that was a tough year for me personally, but it was also a tough year for you, I think, for different reasons. First year for me, being married and having somebody not really like pay a whole lot of attention to you. I think so. It was kind of like a pride thing, probably. Like, okay, I've waited for so long to, give myself to this person, and they don't really have a lot of time for me, in hindsight, I got a little butthurt over some stuff that I don't know if it ever came out explicitly, but I definitely probably was feeling that tension of like, you were constantly studying. So what was that lead in, like, what was dental school like for you? We wanted to kind of we didn't want to talk about current day dentistry necessarily because, you're still dealing with a lot of patients, a lot of confidential stuff, and it's your job. So whether good or bad days, we'll leave that there. But the dental school part, I don't think many people understand how taxing that is. So like, what was dental school like for you?
It was hard, but compared to like what undergrad college was, that was almost tougher for me. Undergrad was only because I had a good group of friends, but no one was in kind of my field of study. So I felt really alone kind of academically. Whereas at school, we're all studying the same thing, all trying to do the same thing, all have the same goal. And so there was really a lot of camaraderie there, I think, which was helpful. But so speaking on like around the time we got married, I had just finished the first year of dental school. There were 3 weeks of break in between first and second year. The first week off for our summer break was like wedding week. And then we got married on Saturday. The next week was our honeymoon. And then we had 1 week living in our apartment together for the first time ever before I started school again. And then the second year of dental school is when you take your first round of boards. And so that is just...
It was brutal.
It was tough. It was
like
it's just
for
constant
you, but for
studying.
me too, just like to watch you.
Yeah.
Like it was hard for you. I felt bad for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because it was literally like you would get home.
Because you're studying for school, and then you're also studying for this huge test that you have to pass to even be able to continue trying to be a dentist. So.
Yeah, no, the hours.
It was a rough year.
Watching you get home, eat dinner, and a lot of days just study until you went to bed. I remember a lot of days where I actually went to bed before you because you were just up late. And that hasn't been a theme in our marriage
How the
at
tides
all.
have turned.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I remember some specific days. Those are probably the days I was feeling a little bitter. Because you just got married and you expect that you're gonna get to sleep together every night. That's like that Christian kind of youth group thing. It's like you're like waiting for your person, like the one, and then like everything's gonna be perfect and awesome and amazing, and and you're just gonna get busy all the time because you held out for so that kind of the whole abstinence kind of shtick sort of. I guess like an unrealistic expectation sort of.
Yeah.
Especially for somebody who's career driven and in a field where like you just have to study all the time. Like that is kind of your main priority.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that was tough. It was tough.
It was.
Watching you just do flashcards over and over and over and like, yeah.
And you were also commuting every day to
That's
Columbus
true.
to work.
From south side of Indy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a weird year.
Was there anything in that year that was there ever a time that where you were like, man, I just don't think I'm going to make it through this?
School or marriage? No to both.
Okay. That's really good. To the marriage piece, like, I don't think I realized I had an anger problem until we got married.
Until we tried to put the dishes in the kitchen, organize our cabinets.
No. Actually, I think what it was the dog. I remember one very specific time where I was already frustrated at you about something. I think it was just kind of like I felt sort of alone in some ways. But we got a dog, and I remember so vividly tripping over the dog. But I was already so mad about something. I tripped over the dog, lost my mind. And I don't have a bad temper. And I lost my mind and left the house or the apartment. Went to the store. I was like, I'm going to the store. I have to leave. I'm good. And I forgot my wallet at the apartment. God. And I had to drive back home and walk in and grab my wallet.
That's
and it
so
was
embarrassing.
It was the kind of embarrassing thing that it's like, it's kind of that typical moment where a wife gets to be like, you're an idiot.
Yeah.
Like, you're stupid. And, so grabbed my wallet, probably was smiling while I did it because it was embarrassing. And then, I went to the store. But it's like it took circumstances. That's what I always tell people. Marriage, it sets a new, it gives you new circumstances, a new kind of surrounding, a new environment to kind of let the things that probably are already within us, at least like biblically speaking, come to the surface.
Yeah.
Would you agree with that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about our apartment?
Because
that's the thing I didn't think that we were going to survive.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So we rented an apartment on the south side of Indy. It looked really good at the beginning. Everything was very nice. Pretty new, I think, too.
I would say the name. I just don't want to get like sued or something.
No, we don't need to do that. In the first couple months, it was August. I don't remember the exact date. It was August. I came home from school. Chris was in Columbus at work, and our door was open. It looked like it had kind of been like crowbarred open. So then I went to the leasing office and asked someone to come in with me because I didn't know if there was someone in our apartment. But when I walked in with someone with me, everything looked fine. Went back to the bedroom and it was just completely ransacked. It was crazy. The mattress was off the bed. All the drawers were open. We were missing our honeymoon money, a computer, a guitar. Yeah, it was wild. And so I said that because that's where the dog came from. We had to get a dog for protection.
That was the excuse. Yeah.
Yes.
Visit Petco, come home with a dog.
Right.
Never go to the adoption days because we knew there was going to be dogs there, but I didn't expect to come home with one.
We kind of did though, for protection.
Yeah. So that was a terrible experience. Yeah. A lot of stuff stolen, a lot of money stolen,
And a lot of
different.
A lot of images drawn on our cars.
Yes.
Graphic images. Spray paint on our door.
Yep.
Graphic images.
That was like the first couple months that we were there. Fast forward the last month we were there. It was like the very last day that we were in our apartment. I came back to get some stuff. That's when it had been crowbarred open and again. Remember that?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, it happened twice, right? Because they had, totally broken the door. They drew a bunch of stuff on the door.
And we never found out who or
never
why.
Found out who. Could have been whoever was across the hall. That was really scary.
We were good neighbors.
I thought so. But so back to dental school real quick for you, because before we leave that season, we ended up moving back down to Columbus after your second year of dental school.
Yes.
So I think I was still working at Cummins, and you had your next 2 years, which were more like clinical years, right? So you were taking patients up in Indianapolis and some that will come from down here, right? To visit. And how do you think that time formed you, like, as a dentist?
I don't really know how to answer that other than Like I just got to work on people. So
Do you think it made you excited? Or do you think it was one of those things that was like, man, I just don't know if I could do this forever?
No, it wasn't that. I guess more excited. But it's kind of strange because, like, up at the dental school, you see one patient in the morning, one patient in the afternoon. You're with, no matter what you're doing, you're with someone for like 3 hours. And it's kind of hard to imagine life outside of school because, in the real world, like, I can see 5 patients in 3 hours. So it's not realistic, and you're not really sure how you jump from what you're used to at school to what being in the real world is.
Did you feel like it was like a second college experience? Because I remember, and I asked that
The first 2 years, yes, for sure.
Okay.
Because it was just like college, I would say, but maybe a little bit more intense. The last 2 years were kind of unique because you're not really in the classroom too much.
It's similar in the fact that like you were living with other people, you like sharing an apartment with other people, eating out a lot, probably like you guys had Chick-fil-A right by your house. It was like, that was awesome, or by your apartment. And then living on loans, right? Like nobody had a job because you really couldn't.
There were some people that did, and I don't know how.
Well, watching what you did, I don't know how.
Yeah.
But.
And there were some people too that were married, had a kid, had a couple kids. I don't know how, but they did it.
Yeah, and then you had some people that you said like kind of quit halfway through or decided they wanted to do other things, and right? Because if you failed one, that was the thing that tripped me out, is if you failed like one thing, not like a whole. If you failed like one class,
you couldn't really retake the class.
You had to take the whole year over again,
yes.
right? Which for
generally, yes.
For you could have been another 50 or 60 grand,
right?
And for some people, out of state could have been like 90 to 100, right? Which is blows my mind. But yeah, I just remember thinking like, man, this is like all in, or
it's like do or die.
You're screwed.
Yeah.
Unless you decide to be a doctor or something else where you're going to make a lot more money, to be able to pay that back. But you initially wanted to be a physician's assistant?
I wanted to do something in the medical field. I never really, until college, I really hadn't gotten that like pinned down. Physician assistant is kind of so I majored in health sciences with a concentration of pre-dentistry. My first concentration was pre-physician assistant. And then my freshman year at Purdue is when I changed to pre-dentistry.
I know a lot of people in college either tend to go one of two ways with their faith. When I was at Purdue with you, we found a church that we really, really liked. My first year in college, I did not really find a church there that I went to because I came home a lot. So I guess probably went to CCC a lot. And you were still here, so that kind of made sense, and that's what I looked forward to. But I am curious, did you feel like your faith had changed in college from high school, and then do you think it changed much? How do you think it changed from like college to dental school, like that period of your life? Did you see much change there? Because a lot of it has to do with friends, right? And I, to this day, am so freaking grateful for the friends that you had in dental school specifically. And so shout out to those ladies and their husbands, because their husbands are awesome, and I love them so much. Never mind. I'm not gonna. When we get together, when Bria forces me to get together with her friends from dental school,
which is not often enough.
Initially, it felt like a forcing. And then it felt like I get to hang out with these guys who can relate to just being pushed to the sideline, and while their wives are just like balling out, in dental stuff. So back to how do you think that kind of shaped your faith throughout that? What would it have been? Let's just see, high school, undergrad, but I mean, 8 years, 8 to 10 years.
going from high school to undergrad was tough. I would say after you left Purdue, that was when it got tough because most of my friends, most of my friends were Catholic. And so it was kind of lonely. Probably I didn't.
You mean at Purdue?
Yes, sorry, at Purdue for undergrad. I didn't try super hard to make friends at church, I don't think. Mostly because I left the church that you and I had gone to, and just tried something different, but I just felt too busy to like really plug into church life. And I'm sure I wasn't. It just felt like I had other stuff I needed to do. And I went to church on Sunday, pretty much every Sunday, and showed up. And I wouldn't, like, my faith didn't dwindle or anything, but it was just kind of a more lonely time of life. And that changed again when I entered dental school because the ladies that I lived with my first year of dental school were Christians. We together found a good church that we really liked. So yeah, that it kind of went back up. Didn't feel as lonely. We got one of my roommates was in dental school with me. Her and I joined a small group together, and we kind of got plugged in pretty well.
I mean, you're fairly independent.
Yeah.
You kind of think for yourself,
right?
You know.
And I don't think I ever really felt like I didn't want to go to church anymore. I didn't want to be a part of a church family. So I think that in the long term I would have, whether I was going by myself or with a group of people, I think it would have shaped up and gotten more plugged in. Because I think that I knew that my time at undergrad was so brief that like I didn't feel like a strong need to make. I had a group of friends, and so I didn't feel the need to make like another friend group that I knew that in 2 years I'd be leaving.
Yeah, I think college felt like that. I agree. I completely agree. There was just such a temporariness to it that it felt like, why would I invest in these people? Yeah. But I do remember investing in places like in churches. But again, churches are people, and yeah, I do remember at IU thinking, man, like I just don't care to find a church here.
I think it was like, this probably sounds silly, but like, what does my temporary presence here have to offer? Yeah. A church that is like sound and structured and has all the people that they need.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, I think at that time too, I didn't even care. Like for one, ministry wasn't on my mind, but like I would say until our year at Purdue, my year at Purdue at Clear River Church, I had never been like, man, I love this church. Like I'd never been to a church like that. Now, and part of it's just youth, right? Like you don't really care. You go to a church because you're kind of, your parents go there. You're kind of forced to go there. But I think like, yeah, sort of more as an adult falling in love with the local church, period. And then that turning into at Clear River, I remember very specifically a conversation that I had with the pastor there after a sermon that they did about ministry. They talked about at the end of the sermon, like, there are probably people here who feel like after we've talked about this, God is calling you into something, right? And I think that probably shaped that moment, was really defining for me, because without that, I probably wouldn't have ended up going out to Missouri.
Right.
I wouldn't have started down the path of those conversations, right? And so for me, it was like, man, it took changing schools to find, like, not only to be with you, but to find a love for a local church that I like loved so much, and like it deeply impacted me, and and people I met there and relationships I built that impacted me so strongly in 9 months or 10 months, however long that school year lasted. It was crazy. But you didn't connect quite like that, right?
No. I think and just in general, it takes me longer to connect than it does you, just
That's true.
personality wise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But do you think that's because it's not because you don't care.
Oh, no.
It's just because you don't dig in immediately, right?
Right. Just, yeah, I'm just slower.
Yeah. So after the whole dental school scene, I mean, I remember after getting married, we had always had the vision and I remember talking to you before we got back together that like, hey, I think God's called me into ministry. Like, I'm pretty certain about this. And I think God's called everybody into ministry, but I meant like vocationally, like to be a pastor or something. And at the time, I didn't know what that looked like, but we did kind of have the idea to plant a church here in Columbus. And that was sort of in motion already, the prayers and the thoughts and all of that. But I also remember having a conversation with you in your living room at your parents' old house of like, hey, that also means if we get back together, like officially, we're going to go where God calls us to go. Do you remember that conversation? Because that was kind of the only stipulation. Like, hey, I know you're doing your thing. You got a plan for your life. But like, if we're together and God says, you know, you need to go here or there, like we have to go. It's not really like an option, right? To be outside of the will of God. And that's hard to decipher, right? And that's complicated. But at that time, it definitely was, you know, our thought was like, man, church planting is it, you know. And so we prayed about that for a long time, right? And then those plans were sort of in motion. It felt like that was going to be like sort of this really incredible thing. And it was in a lot of ways, would you say? I mean, there were tons of, you know, we were at Athens Church for six years, I think. Full years, but like a few before. I mean, for me, a few before that, sort of like prepping, planning, just helping literally any way that we could, right? And then coming on staff there kind of from day one as a worship pastor, or not officially a worship leader. And what did you think about that whole plan? Like, was that something that scared you? Was that something that you thought, like, we'll try, but I don't know that it was scary. I think that I was so wrapped up in my school and what I had to do there that I didn't really think about it so much I wasn't as committed as you were. Not that I thought it was going to be I thought it was a forever thing. Like I fully believed in everything that we were doing, everything that we stood for, but like I wasn't as involved, I guess is what I mean, instead of committed. I just wasn't as involved. Well, I just had no plan B.
Yeah.
I would say you had a thing.
Oh, the church wasn't my plan A.
You had it, yeah. And that was like, I don't know any other vision outside of this for my life, for my future, for our future, you know.
Right.
So what do you think about kind of that whole experience? Like when you think back on starting a church from scratch, because that's kind of something that not many people get to do. Like there's actually only really a handful of people that I've considered like interviewing on this channel about what is your church planting experience like, and you got to see it from day one.
It was great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun. I mean, it was really cool just to see and hear about like all the background stuff, all the plans that were made, and how much the plans changed from like the beginning kind of thoughts to how things actually came to fruition. I don't remember any like bad parts about it. I mean, there were hard parts when, you know, things didn't come together exactly maybe as we had originally thought. But we were with our friends. We were with our friends, with our family. Like, it was a really cool time. Yeah,
I remember joking about it too. And I really think this is kind of before our pastor was officially like, hey, I think God called me to do this. I remember joking with friends about like, well, man, we just love being together so much, like during summers and things, like summer breaks and fall breaks and, you know, this kind of stuff from college. Like we were always together, friends, mostly old friends from church, right? From youth group. And like that was amazing. That experience was amazing. Like up through college, just the different ways that you got to grow with people, and really like grow up like as adults. And we're friends with, I would say, all of those people today. Like, you know, God is doing awesome things in them and through them. And really just an inseparable group of people. And it just didn't feel weird that we would start a church together.
Right.
Like it just felt
It just
really
felt like
normal.
something that we we would just get together and do, because we always got together and did things. But now we had, instead of, you know, playing pranks on each other and watching people play, what was it called? Halo.
Tread lightly.
And well, instead of that, we had like a focus.
It didn't feel like you were wasting your life anymore on video games.
We were doing something really cool.
Yeah. Do you think what do you think you learned about maybe just church life in that whole situation? I mean, you were kind of drawn into things, not that you didn't want to be there, but like by way of me being on staff at a church, you know, do you feel like that kind of roped you into things that like, man, there's no way I would have ever been part of this, you know, or had to serve in these ways, or that, you know, did you feel like being married to somebody that was on staff at the church kind of changed your experience at the church?
Oh, I'm sure. Like I'm sure that I don't know if like without you leading worship, I would have learned how to run the computer and stuff for the church services. What was the question?
Are there ways that you think that you were kind of drawn into different roles
or
a different experience than maybe other people had because you were married to somebody that was working at the church?
Yeah, I mean, you know, for most of my life, even when we started the church plant, and I was our first church plant when I was a kid. I was so young back then that I didn't really see much like background stuff with that. So like, you know, you grew up just going to church on Sunday mornings, not really thinking about how it's all kind of put together. And this, you know, this Athens, especially because we literally put it together and took it down every single week. And you just never, most people don't think about how that all just happens. It's all just there.
I've literally had people say, oh, I never have thought about that you could start a new church.
Right.
Like churches are always just there.
Right.
And they're old. And like they're just
and the signs
there.
are just always there. No one comes and puts them up. They're just always there. And yeah.
Yeah, I feel like I have a burden in my heart for people that are married to church staff members, because like whether pastors or any other role in the church, because you kind of get roped into probably serving more often, probably carrying some of the burden like emotionally from people, you know, like there were definitely really difficult things that we went through there. I mean, it changed it, like that kind of life has the ability to change the nature of friendships and change the nature of like the joy that you have when you're serving. And I would even say like on this side of it sort of can create like a cynicism toward other churches. Like it's kind of like when you see behind,
like, oh, what's going on in the background of this place or this
when
place.
you see behind the veil, sort of.
Yeah. But it's also strange, you know, I think the skepticism when and if it occurs is now like we don't get to be a part of like the background stuff. So that's all kind of a mystery. And
it's kind of nice.
It's kind of nice, but also, I don't know. If there's weird stuff going on, I'd rather know.
Yeah, I think my tendency now, after helping plant a church, you know, kind of being there from day one, is like you have a lack of you realize people, I don't want to say a lack of respect because that's not true. Like, the church we're at now, I super respect the pastors and the staff, and they work so hard and they do such an amazing job. But you just realize like they can't be your saviors either.
Yeah.
And everybody would say that out loud, or, but like secretly it's kind of like those people, like everybody would say, no, Jesus is my savior. But it's like the amount of trust we put in pastors to get everything right and to make every right decision and to never mess up and to really kind of be perfect humans.
Yeah.
Right. Is
well, I think,
unfair.
it really humanizes leaders because we were leaders and
we didn't know what we were doing.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
I think too, like, because when you're part of a leadership team or a launch team of a church, like your job is to basically do what's asked of you and to like just be able to volunteer in several different areas. And so that can become like burdensome almost, especially because, you're relied upon to do it as often as you can. And so you don't really think, eventually you start to not really think about, I'm doing this to serve the Lord, to point people to Jesus. And it just becomes something you show up for because you have to.
Do you think you felt that way a lot?
I think I went through fairly long seasons of it. Probably more towards the end.
Well, when you're starting a church, you do feel like you have to be at everything.
Well, like when you're first starting, at least in my experience, like I was so excited to do it. So excited to be there because this was really, really cool.
Definitely unique. And exciting. I mean, seeing new people show up at church every week is exciting. Showing up to small groups, seeing people, I don't know, even like become small group leaders and Bible study leaders and things that, I wouldn't have seen that in a different season, or like you might not have seen that in them at a church that felt fully staffed and, like they had plenty of volunteers and things like that. So I think the ability people felt to step up and meet needs was really, really cool.
Yeah.
And the camaraderie that came with it, like if you're out there and you're part of a church plant, like, there is a camaraderie that you can't really explain, and that is so like the lack of it is felt. That's been the saddest part about kind of not being at that church anymore, is you don't feel that camaraderie anymore, but instead you feel, depending on how people kind of ended up going different ways, where they end up now, people leave churches for all kinds of different reasons, but you still feel sort of a mourning, like that camaraderie, the lack of and the loss of that camaraderie. But and then you're dropped into, depending on where you go to church next, you're kind of, we felt like, okay, well, you're going to pick a place. We picked a much larger church than we were at, but it feels like you kind of get dropped in the middle and, okay, here, meet everyone, I think I probably undervalued how difficult that was for people even that came to our church. Because like, oh, why don't you just plug into everything? Why don't you just...
No, that was, going to a new church, I think that was really, really eye-opening to, just thinking about how I would, at the church that we were part of, the leadership team, how I would like speak and greet new people and treat them. I think I just kind of undervalued how important that is until you become the new person. And it's really scary.
It's super scary. I remember when we showed up at our new church, Terrace Lake, I guess I can name him, who we love and we think they do a great job.
I don't know why. I don't know why we're saying.
I don't know, but
not names.
I don't know, it's just can be weird, like, oh, well, what happened? Like everybody sees things. Like if you post about something constantly, and then suddenly that stops, it's kind of like, I wonder. It's kind of like the whole thing when you start seeing spouses posting pictures like without their spouse, when they've historically
Right.
done it a
Deep
lot.
dive into what's
You're
going
kind of
on.
like, what's going on? Like if you're observant,
Right.
you know, like you're one of those people. You're observant. Like
Yeah.
I don't really notice that kind of stuff. Like, but yeah, I mean, you suddenly your life isn't all about this one thing anymore. This one church. It's
Right.
kind of like, well, yeah, you know, things happen and people move on and move on into different seasons of ministry. But I remember thinking when we got to the new church, like I just wanted to lead with like nobody knows you. You want to lead with your strengths. You want to tell people kind of what you've done and what you've been a part of and what you've experienced. And, you know, you want to like be impressive in some way.
Yeah.
And I think that's just such a danger because it felt like you kind of realized so much of your identity was wrapped up in
Oh, yes.
what you did, right?
Yeah.
Did you feel that too?
Yeah. But I feel like you more so because it was such a huge part of your identity. Like it was your job.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, a lot of people's jobs are their identity.
Right.
But yeah, I think definitely with ministry is dangerous because you can think you can start for the right reasons and then end up in a place that's like, well, I'm nothing without being on a stage. That was kind of how I felt.
Sure.
And I would say I'm at a place now where I like it, you know, like I like that I still get to lead worship, you know, at Columbus Collective events and even at church. Like I really love it, but I wouldn't say I need it anymore.
Yeah.
And there was a time where I needed it.
Sure.
For sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I would say I feel a little more secure in like, I don't know, having less to prove.
Yeah.
Maybe. But because that's the other thing too, in a church plant, there's kind of these vacuums of leadership, right? And you're trying to figure out what's needed. And if you have the ability to do a lot of different things, like you'll take every opportunity to do those. I
Sure.
think for me, that was kind of I won't say burnout. I don't ever feel like I really like burned out, but sort of like, okay, there's a gap, like got to fill it.
Right.
And we had plenty of friends that did that too. Like they would raise their hand to do just about anything. And that can probably also stifle the growth in other people, who you want to challenge, but you don't want to like ask too much of people.
Right.
And that kind of stuff. Do you ever feel like you were asked too much of there?
I don't think so. No. Again, mostly because of my actual job and school. I feel like people just kind of understood and respected that I was busy in other areas. So that, I mean, I'm sure I was asked, there were things I was asked to do that I just had to say no to.
Yeah.
And I've mostly been okay with having to do that.
Kids change things too.
Yeah.
Obviously. So having 3 of our own, I remember even after, maybe before we left Athens, we were with some friends that we'd been in small group with for many, many years at that point, who we still love, you know, who we still talk to and get together with periodically. And we were sitting there counting, like, wow, none of us had kids. Like, we were so young.
Right.
So I guess for context, if you're still watching, maybe our lead pastor, Aaron, he was 26.
That's so
25,
young.
maybe 26. And, you know, so I was like 24, 25, starting a church. And it's like, I think a lot of the things that we did probably in hindsight were reactionary to like churches that we had gone to before or been raised at, right? That weren't bad places. It's just like there is still a youthful zeal to do things differently. And to not understand that maybe like, oh, maybe people did things for a reason. Like
Right.
maybe that, you know, they learned the hard way, you know, kind of like we did in a lot of ways. But how do you think having kids changed that? Because I remember on our friend's back porch counting up, man, none of us had kids at the beginning. And now, you know, okay, you guys have 3, you guys have 2, you guys have 4, you guys have 2, you get, you know, and suddenly you're just like, man, you're surrounded by little kids.
Right. And we all kind of started having kids around the same time. I mean, there was like a huge boom within like 6 months of each other.
We were like the same
And-
age.
Right.
It was a very young
Yeah.
leadership team. And,
Right.
Yeah. Young
And so
church.
like I know for a very brief time with when Perry was born, like you stepped away for a few weeks and our kids leader stepped away for a while when she had her first little one. And so just having to fill those gaps with a more small audience to try to like pull from was difficult.
Yeah.
And then, like you can't really put our nursery situation was kind of strange too. When we were at the movie theater, and so like trying to do the computer stuff while also not being able to put a little baby in the nursery just was hard. And so that's when we really had to start searching, I think, for more volunteers, because I think, when nobody had kids, everyone was like willing to just spend a lot of extra time working on things and, and volunteering and stuff. And then when kids started coming, it's just kind of like, we got to step away a little bit. Like we're not physically able to do everything that we've been doing.
Especially when you have to be there like 3 hours before
Right.
church starts, right?
Mm-hmm.
Instead of like being on time
Right.
to church. Yeah.
Yeah. I wasn't very good at being on time.
Well, I wasn't saying that.
Yeah, sure.
No, I wasn't. But like even today, I showed up at church this morning like right at 9:00.
Right.
And that's a struggle with 3 kids, but with any kids really. So yeah, no, it changed. I mean, it basically felt like it cut your volunteer team in half.
Yeah.
Because you have to split time. And I think I realized how busy churches can make people with volunteer opportunities.
Yeah.
And especially now going to church that has just like an abundance of needs and opportunities that you can fill and, roles that you can volunteer in. It's like, man, it just gets harder and harder to say no, but it becomes like more important to say no.
Because all the volunteer opportunities and stuff are things that you want to do. Like I would love to serve probably even more than what you or I do, but it's just not really feasible because like we can't. It's very difficult for us to serve together on the same Sunday because where do you put the kids?
What have you found to be the hardest part of raising kids?
Discipline.
Yeah, you're pretty undisciplined. I'm just kidding. What do you mean?
So like with our 2-year-old, how can you discipline her to where she understands that what she has done needs a consequence? Because like her mind is just not like logical enough. And so I struggle with that. I don't know what to do to make her understand to stop doing something.
The belt.
Oh yeah.
Just kidding.
That's not.
We don't use a
We
belt.
don't have a belt
We have belts. We don't use belts.
on our children.
Right. Yeah. What do you think have been the biggest transitions from like the biggest things you've learned moving from like 1 kid to 2 kids to 3 kids? How do you think that's changed sort of how we have to function?
I mean, I feel like with each kid you kind of you feel yourself losing a little bit of control and you have to be okay with it. Like,
I thought you were going to say losing a little bit of yourself. I was like, that's very relatable.
a little bit of sanity is gone. No, but lose like just a little bit of control. Like if there's a baby over here that I have to pick up, like I can't tend to these 2 over here, and it just has to be okay. You just try to make your environment as safe as possible and just hope that no one falls backwards in a chair or something. I don't know. Yeah.
The amount of times I heard people say, you're playing zone defense now is like, yeah.
It's true.
I mean, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, how do you think having kids has changed you? Like discipline's obviously hard, right? Figuring out how to discipline a kid, but like with 1 kid or multiple kids, how do you think kids have changed you like personally?
Priorities are way different, I would say. Like coming out of school, I couldn't wait to be like a big boss lady, just being able to run everything and just really focused on work. And then kids come, and I don't know, I want to have a good day at work, and I want to come home to my family. I want to be with my kids, and that doesn't make work any less important or make me work any less hard than what I do, but like my top priority is being at home with my kids.
Yeah, I think the priorities thing is hard. And our family situations are different, which I don't know how, I mean, surely that contributes to the priorities thing, but like, growing up without a dad was, it's probably reactionary. Like if I were to talk to, like some of the issues I have with wanting to be around, like for everything and like really trying to make sure I'm here for like bedtimes and, all the special things,
Right.
like, kind of to the point where I don't really ask to do other things that often, I would say,
Right.
if I don't have to. Like some things I do, certainly. Like like the first thing that comes to mind is like band practices, right? But just generally speaking, it's like I'm probably going to try to do everything I can to be here for bedtime,
Sure.
right? But like some of that could stem from, and I'm also very, I would say just so aware. I almost mourn our kids leaving before they're even gone.
Yeah, you do.
And maybe a lot of people do that. Maybe that's more common than I think. But like, I'm just so aware that it's a very short amount of time that you have kids. You only have so much time to instill things in them, and mostly just love and like presence, right? Is like half the battle.
Yeah.
But a lot of that, I don't know. If I talk to like a counselor or somebody, they'd probably just root it back to like daddy issues or something.
Yeah, but I think too, like, how lucky are we, meaning me and the girls, that is the way that you lean after not having a dad. When it could very easily go, your dad wasn't around much, and that's kind of what you were used to, and so it could have very easily gone, more towards that way of it being okay with you not being here and not making us like your top priority, but that's very obviously not the case. And I'm very grateful for that, and I'm sure they are.
Oh,
Ugh. Ugh, compliments.
Ugh. How's that taste?
Ugh.
Do you think you're more patient now than before you had kids?
Yeah.
Okay.
I still wouldn't describe myself as a patient person, but yes.
Do you think you were ready to have kids, like mentally, and because people say like you can't be ready,
Right. Yeah.
because you kind of can't, but you kind of can.
Well, yeah, because you just don't know. You don't know what you're getting yourself into. But yeah, I think so. It's not like this happened on accident. Yeah. So.
Do you think it's how do you think you had a do you think you had a picture of what discipleship looked like for your kids versus what reality is sort of like with
Yes.
discipling kids?
Yeah.
How do you think that's different?
Well, I mean, you think that, every night we're going to read a Bible story. We're going to say our prayers together, and that kids don't care about Bible stories sometimes. And sometimes when you say, okay, are you ready to say your prayers? They just yell no.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, or they want the same Bible story every single night, right?
For like a full 6 months, just the same Bible story.
Yeah, David and Goliath was
correct
on repeat.
Mm-hmm.
But our kid was also like scared of Goliath, which that just didn't make any sense at all. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But every night she would pick, okay, we have to read that story.
Right.
And kids tend to gravitate toward like the TV shows they like, and not just TV shows they like, but like the episodes of TV shows that they like over and over and over.
Right.
Yeah, and I found the same thing with like Bible stories too. I've been encouraged in some ways. One of our friends from CCC taught our 5-year-old's class one day, and they said she just knew the answers for everything, for whatever the story was. And I think he said the story was like David and Bathsheba or something. was like, I have not taught her
I've
that
never,
story.
I've never told her
So,
that story.
yay, Terrace Lake,
Right.
because, they're doing something right. But, yeah, I would agree with that. Just that you want to pray with your kid and they talk through the whole thing.
Right.
You want to, teach them life lessons, and it's like, well, they're two. So
Yeah. They don't care.
they really don't care. Yeah. Do you think there's anything about being a mom that has surprised you, that you have either disliked, and you can be as honest as you want to there, that you've either disliked or really actually enjoyed, that maybe you didn't think you would?
I really enjoy a lot of it. I think that I didn't expect to feel so much jealousy, I think, towards you.
We're going
Like,
deep.
Well, no, no,
Going
no.
deep.
I just mean I don't know about that, because Parker right now is like a stage 5 clinger to you. And so sometimes it makes me sad that she doesn't do that as much to me. But then also I don't think that I would like her hanging on me all the time. So I guess I would say overall it's more emotional than what I thought it would be.
So do you just mean jealousy in regards to kids' attention, or the desire to want one parent over the other?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's super relatable.
Right.
I think a lot of people deal with that.
And it's been, it changes with age too, because I remember Perry doing that, and when she was around Parker's age and a little bit older. And now I feel like sometimes I don't know.
Well, I mean, there's times that I'm jealous too, because it's like Perry will say, "Can we go eat at the airport? Can we go eat breakfast at the airport?" But she will literally say just me and you.
Yeah.
And I'll say, "Can I come?" And she'll say, "No,
Yeah.
just me and mommy." And that's really sweet.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it kind of used to be the opposite.
Yeah.
And that hurts a little bit.
She did ask me this evening if we could go on Saturday.
Well, the answer's no.
Are you surprised by how much you enjoy being a girl dad?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I've told a handful of people when we found out we were having a girl, I was legitimately upset for about 5 minutes,
Yeah.
And it was a strong 5 minutes, It wasn't oh, I just got over it. It was no, I felt some kind of way for about 5 whole minutes, and just disappointed.
Yeah.
And I don't think that happened with the second daughter.
Right.
The second kid. I wasn't upset. And because then it was well, you only know one thing.
Right.
And you only know how to change diapers that way, and you know how, you just get it. You sort of, it's different, girls and boys. But I think the more, I hope this doesn't offend anybody really, but the more little boys, 1 and 2 and 3-year-old boys that I meet from our friends, the more grateful I am that I don't have boys, because they're nuts.
Crazy.
Yeah, crazy. And our girls, maybe, I don't know, if we had a boy, maybe they'd be kind of mild-mannered too.
Yeah.
But that's just kind of maybe our personalities as well. I'm trying to think of something. Is there anything negative that you, something that you just really don't like as much?
I don't like the process of babies learning how to eat solid foods. I do not like that at all.
It scares the freak out of me. Yeah.
I know, too much gagging and choking.
Yep.
Don't
Yep.
like it.
Yeah, I've watched other friends try to feed their kids, and yeah, the gagging and choking, and I'm like, they're dying. What are you not going to do anything about this? But then, yeah, we have to go through it too.
Right.
Yeah. I guess I did already ask you a negative, and you gave a negative.
Yeah.
Kind of the jealousy thing.
Right.
Yeah. Because that's something you can't be ready for either, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because there was a time with our first kid, and I know I've talked to several people who actually have experienced this, where Perry, our 5-year-old, would not let you put her to bed.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
That was when she was under 2 years old, probably. But
Yeah.
that was tough.
Yeah.
I remember some nights where it felt like you were kind of mad at me, but it wasn't a lot. It was just there were a couple specific times where It's like, I didn't do anything,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and it didn't really matter
Yeah.
because it wasn't about
It all
me.
evens out.
Yeah, no, but it wasn't about me,
Right.
right? So I
But
think
you can't
that's,
you can't act mad at your 18-month-old.
oh, you can. You can.
I try not to.
Yeah, no, tell that to my drunk, abusive father.
Stop.
No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. He wasn't abusive.
Stop.
But he did drink a lot. It's part of my history. It's part of my family.
Okay.
But yeah, I think I didn't think I was going to like being a girl dad as much. I also just didn't think that I was going to have nearly as much purpose. And we've kind of talked about that too. Like the times, I think the times I feel the most purpose in my life is when it's actually not leading worship. It's preaching, for one, which I don't do that often anymore and didn't that often anyway. But there's sort of a part of you that just kind of comes alive in a different way. You feel like, man, I feel like I was like, this is what God is, you know, this is kind of how God has wired you or something.
Sure.
You know? And I'm not even saying like, oh, I'm good at this. It's like, but I think there's plenty of people who do things and they feel like they're serving their purpose that God has for them. That's one of them. The other one is tucking our girls into bed after they're asleep.
Yeah.
Pulling blankets over that, you know, like an hour after they fell asleep. That kind of thing. That's probably one of my favorite things. What would you say one of your like favorite things about parenting is?
I really like watching their minds work and grow and just how quickly that happens. Like just like the first time that they count to 10, you're like, how did you know how to do that? Or like Perry's reading now. Parker can look at a number and know what it is. And Piper's like learning how to crawl and she didn't do that, you know, last week. Just like, I don't know, like everything feels so significant. And it is. It is, but it isn't. Because like, you know, most people learn how to crawl, walk, stuff like that. I'm just watching your kids. Most people. Not everyone learns how to walk and crawl.
Well, no. You were watching a thing. You were watching somebody on like Instagram complaining about why do people celebrate the stupid stuff that their kids do, like sit up. Like, oh my gosh, they're sitting up for the first time. It's like, yeah, people do that. Like people learn to do that. Why is that a big deal? Like that's silly.
No, it's really cool to see.
It's not a big deal.
Right.
I think it's cool. Like, yeah.
It's just really cool to see your kids. And like, I just feel like sometimes you can literally see their minds working and learning.
Yeah, I agree with that. So you're going to have a fourth kid or no?
I don't know about that.
I think so that's one of those places I get to where it feels like as parents, I don't think I was ready for the loss of time to like be ambitious toward other things, you know, like even like I haven't made a YouTube video in, you know, a couple months. It's like that, just like finding the time. I don't think you can be ready for that. Like how busy kids keep you. And I kind of remember feeling that way, like even getting married, like you felt actually every single season, if you think backwards, I was talking about this with Michael today. Every season has felt like, man, if you think back to high school, it was like, what did I do?
Right.
You had so much time.
Every season feels busy though. Like your time is filled up with something and it all feels important.
Maybe it's a capacity thing. Like your
I do think I think with kids, your capacity definitely grows.
Yeah.
It has to. But I just think that you just fill your time doing something and it all at the time it all feels significant and it's some like with things that you have to get done. But that just changes.
Yeah, because even in college, it was like, man, what did I do? I wasn't busy in high school, but then after college, you're like, gosh, like.
But you were busy in high school. You know, you worked, you played sports, you hung out with friends.
But in hindsight, it doesn't feel like it. It's like, man, what did I do with that time? And then, you know, same in college. Like when I think back to college, it's like, man, I had a lot of free time. And in, you know, in certain seasons, it's like had 20 credit hours and, you know, 3 jobs, like that kind of stuff.
Right.
But even then, it was like when you get full-time jobs out of college, you're like, man, I just feel like I don't have any free time, you know. And then again, when you get married, I feel like that sort of happens too, because you have another person you have to share time with, and then kids just like astronomically like take off with that. So yeah, I definitely feel like that was one of the hardest things for me, was figuring out or learning with each kid you have a little less freedom.
Yeah.
And I'll caveat by saying it's worth it, though.
Yes.
I think it's worth it. So to go a different direction, it's late too. It's past your bedtime.
I know.
It's
so past my bedtime.
Yeah. What do you think has been one of the most challenging things about marriage?
Communication. Easy.
Okay. Okay. Go on. What about communication?
Communication in arguments. Yeah. We just don't do well. That's all I don't know how deep you want me to go into it.
How do you think we argue?
Silently.
Well, I've told you before, I have arguments with you in my head. Yeah. And like even lose those arguments sometimes, which maybe I'm the only honest person who that happens to. I don't know. But that's when I'm kind of like, all right, yeah, I'm just going to stay quiet on the, or whatever. So if I bring something up, it's usually like, yeah, I feel, pretty upset about something. Right. So communication, you said that really fast.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe there's...
Well, just because if we get into like a legit argument, it can last for days, and...
But it's like it's just not talking.
Right, it's just not talking. Right. But I feel like that's the only time that I ever have my issues with you.
Do you think we're unique in that, or do you think other
people?
No,
I'm sure we're not.
Okay.
Yeah. And I'm not really sure why. I think that I know that I can be really, really mean with my words, especially if I'm really mad. So I tried. It's like one of those, if you can't say anything nice, don't say anything at all. And then just after a while, it just gets awkward to bring it up. So then I think maybe we both try to see is this blown over yet, or are we still mad at each other? And it just gets weird.
Yeah, there's sort of a temptation to think it's just going to go away, I think.
Right.
When I'm optimistic in those short seasons, because there are short seasons. We
Yeah.
don't argue that much.
No.
But when we do, it's we don't talk for 3 days.
Right.
And you've said before, obviously, that's not healthy. We probably don't handle that.
No, we don't. We don't handle it the right way.
ways.
That's very obvious.
In comparison, I mean, I think we handle a lot of it better than a lot of people. I was talking to somebody recently who was talking about just the way that their marriage works, and it was kind of like they're just great business partners, right? Do you feel that? Do you ever feel man, we're great business partners, but we really have some things to work on past that?
Yes, and I think that can not significantly, but I think that the older that the girls get and the more stuff that they're involved with, and I think it's easy to just become their chauffeurs, and then at the end of the day we're done and don't feel communicating or spending time together because we just want to go to bed. I think it's easy to just lose sight of each other in times of busyness.
Well, I think metaphorically, yes, but also physically, yes.
Sure.
Because I always tell people
I think one of the hardest things about kids is like that there's two things with, the Bible says that when you get married, you're literally taking your focus, you're dividing it in half, like from God, like this vertical relationship to like this horizontal relationship, right? And that's with any relationships, but specifically with marriage, right? It's just much deeper. You're around people much more.
Right.
You're living life with somebody. Then the second one is like your kids. When you have kids, you're literally always looking at them and just kind of passing each other.
Yeah.
And it's sort of like that's challenging because it's like you can't even. I mean, we'll be frustrated because we're sitting at the table at dinner and can't even have a paragraph's worth of a conversation
right.
without kids being like, "Mommy, Daddy," and that's. I don't know how to change that part.
Right.
So, sometimes it's like, well, how do you change the rest of it then?
It means you have to stay up till midnight recording a podcast to talk to each other.
Is it midnight?
It's 11:58.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, no, it is.
So I guess it would be
anything extracurricular has to happen after kids go to bed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'd be interested to hear like how people fight in their marriage relationships and what works well to end those, or what, but also just kind of what issues they have in ending arguments.
What do you mean ending arguments?
Well, just resolving. Resolving.
Okay.
Yeah,
So, yeah. Well, if you are still watching
Sound
at
off
this
in the
point,
comments.
yeah, I would actually really love to know what is it you argue about the most, and don't comment if this is good. If your significant other is going to see, that comment, don't do it. But if it's going to start something, what do you argue about the most, and then what are the ways you typically resolve that? Yeah, because the resolution's hard.
Yeah. What do we argue about the most?
We argue the thing that bothers me the most, which eventually I think bleeds out and leads into arguments, is the way that you say things. Because you said you can be mean with your words. I think you're meaner with the way that you say your words. I don't even think it's the words that you say. So, it feels like a disrespect thing, not like a.
Yeah.
I don't feel like I take anything personally. I feel more disrespected than attacked.
Because like we don't like argue about specific things. I don't feel like we don't argue about finances a lot, discipline a lot, child care a lot. Like there isn't like a certain,
which makes life great,
like, topic that we argue about. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, when we aren't nice to each other.
Yeah.
Well, it's like just offending each other.
Yeah.
There's different ways to offend each other, I guess.
Yeah. So
words, actions, whatever.
How do I offend you the most?
I think you offend me the most after I have offended you, and then you say something. I don't know how to put this. I think that if I offend you, I feel like sometimes you feel the need to like get back at me and say something as equally offensive or mean.
Maybe. I'm just thinking about the last time we argued.
Me too.
And it wasn't even, it wasn't like that at all, actually. It wasn't let me say something to hurt you. But what you said was probably the worst thing I could have said, which to me didn't make any sense. But obviously that's just the difference in people,
What was it?
You want me to say it?
Yeah.
I told you needed to figure out a different way to you needed to figure out a different way to be upset
rather than taking it out on me. Something like that. Because I
Okay.
felt like you had taken something out on me that like I didn't do anything, you know.
Right.
But
It's
I'm
all
not gonna
it's
know.
all coming back to me.
Yeah,
now.
yeah, yeah. But I'm not gonna know that if, you know, you thought you were sparing me, but like the communication piece was really hard because like the way you thought you were sparing me, like you hurting my feelings by not talking to me
Right.
about something.
Yes.
But in that moment, I thought you were mad at me about something,
Mhm.
and you weren't. You were mad at the kids. Like you were mad at the situation. It
Situation.
wasn't me. It
Yes.
was like, and
But
I
then
literally was like, "What the heck did I do?
right.
I didn't do anything, you know." And suddenly you're just mad at me, and I can't figure it out. And not talking about it, not
Yes.
telling me, not literally not saying anything,
Yeah.
so that you didn't blow up and like
Right.
get overly emotional
Yeah.
or something. Like you thought you were doing a good thing for me.
Mhm.
And for me, that was like, oh, that was the worst thing you could have done, you know.
Yeah. And
So-
then you said
Oh no, I don't even know what it is.
then you said that I had never once in our whole 9 years of marriage said I'm sorry. And that
You hadn't.
you that's well, first of all, that's not true. But also you just implied that you've basically been holding that against me for our whole marriage.
That's true. That's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, that's 100% true. Doesn't make it right, you know, obviously.
Right.
But yeah, that's true.
And so like I think and then just got mad about like why has it taken you 8 years to bring that up?
What's that? I mean, we've talked about this before, but that kind of that whole thing of like, especially in a Christian relationship, like when you're supposed to be so grace driven and forgiving and like, hey
Yeah.
man, if Jesus can forgive me, shoot, I can forgive her. Like, you know,
Mhm.
like that's the crux of anything. And I tell every couple that who I do any wedding ceremony for, like any premarital counseling, is like, if you remember literally one thing that we talk about this whole, in all of the Bible stuff that we read and hear and whatever, and talk like all these different topics, you know, from everything from like money, sex, like roles in the household, like, you know, anything you could think of, parenting, any of it. The one thing, if Jesus has forgiven you, you are called to forgive somebody else. Like that grace can, I think, you know, cover a multitude of our sins,
Right.
you know? And so I think, yeah, I don't know. I think I've always leaned toward the side of trying to show grace, but that also can be ignoring.
But you
a
you obviously
problem.
hadn't forgiven.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Right.
But I think, you know, trying to figure out what to make a mountain out of
Sure.
versus a molehill, it's like, okay, this just isn't worth like an argument, but like enough of that over a long period of time, obviously you're going to blow up about something.
Mhm.
But I mean, I don't know. We don't argue about things well in that regard, but I think they always lead to like profitable
Sure.
conversations eventually.
Do you remember how this all started?
Tell me.
Because I was very hungry. I had spent the entire day feeding children nonstop and hadn't eaten a single thing for myself.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you don't get upset very often, and you were pretty upset.
I was so hungry.
Yeah. I have learned you're not you when you're hungry. Is that Snickers? Yeah. I don't understand that either. Maybe I don't notice it about myself, but maybe I'm different when I'm hungry too. I don't know. But yeah, that's a serious moment for you when you realize you haven't had anything to eat.
Mm-hmm.
What other things do we fight about? Not a whole lot more.
Really?
Not a whole
No.
lot more. But even that friend the other day that was talking about like being good business partners. It's like, I think they were also mentioning, you know, it kind of sucks because you wish things did pop off worse more often, because you can be in a marriage or any relationship and think that everything's fine and great just because there's no like serious problems.
Right.
But like that over time can also lead to, I guess, like a lack of intimacy, you know, not like physically, but like emotionally,
Right.
maybe physically too,
Yeah.
but you know what I mean? So there's sort of I don't ever want kids to get in the way of, like, you know, we will be married, Lord willing, without kids in the
Right.
house longer than with kids in the
Yeah.
house, you know. And so I think I talked about that with Brad and Ronnie Robertson when they were
Mm-hmm.
on here. Like, you know, enjoy the time without kids, but also you're gonna have a lot more time without kids
Right.
too, which is scary.
Yeah.
You know, because you realize how much effort you put into your kids and how much you probably don't put into your marriage as much. And, you know, like, we need to go on date nights more, probably need to pray together more, things like that,
Mm-hmm.
you know. I don't know.
I'm not doing a devotional with you though.
Yeah. On that note, if you have any good couples devotionals,
We've never fought more.
our
Then-
first week of marriage, we decided, you know what, we're going to be like great Christian couple, and I'm going to lead my wife, and we're going to do like this Bible study thing together. And we did a book that our pastor at the time gave us, and it caused some fights.
Mm-hmm.
But it was like a terrible book. To be honest, it was like,
I don't remember what it was.
the
but
types of questions that it asked were like, you know, what has your spouse done today that it was like fishing. It was like
Right.
forcing you to say
something bad.
Yeah, something
Yeah.
bad, something negative. And I was like, nothing. I don't know.
Yeah.
You know, didn't even see you today. Like, I don't. But yeah. So if you have good couples devotional books, I'm not opposed to something like that.
But I am
pick,
skeptical.
just don't pick stupid ones. Yeah. Yeah. But that's one thing in marriage too that I thought that's a little different than what I thought it might be like, you know, because you kind of have this picture of like, oh yeah, you'll do like Bible studies together and you'll
Mm-hmm.
pray together all the time and this and that, and like, I don't know, maybe we just suck at that and other people are probably really good at that, but most of our growing, I think, has been done separately.
Yeah.
Not that we haven't had a lot of conversations about what we learn and ways that we grow and stuff, but like we've never been typically to the same conferences. You know, they've always been different, or the same retreats, or
Mm-hmm.
doing the same Bible study, you know, even separately, that kind of stuff. And it was a wake-up call for me when we got married that, like, you didn't want me to be your pastor, you know, because you kind of pride yourself in something, and it's kind of like you know, you went to school to be a dentist, and like you expect me to
Mm-hmm.
be your patient, but like you don't expect me to be your pastor.
Right.
You know, in fact, like quite the opposite. It's like you don't want me to pastor you, and no
don't-
pastor's wife does. I don't think.
I don't know. I think that especially at the beginning of marriage, I was like more embarrassed by like my lack of knowledge versus your wealth of knowledge of Bible
A
stuff.
few things.
that that like I didn't want to look stupid.
Well, I think I didn't either. I think that's even with whatever knowledge I thought I had, or you thought I had. Yeah, I think that's why we don't talk to a lot of people about our faith, period, is because you don't think you know enough to like lead somebody, you know? Actually, that was a good hot take from Luke this morning at church at CCC was, if you feel stagnant in your faith, the answer is probably not more Bible study. I was like, oh yeah. Like, it's probably that you need to go share what you know with somebody else, right? Instead of like storing up this like wealth of knowledge and wisdom from the Bible. Like, no, you need to go like tell other people about Jesus and, you know, help disciple other people. That was really good. So, I don't know. Well, we'll wrap it up. You're tired.
I'm so tired.
Thank you guys so much for being here. We really appreciate your time, and I appreciate your time.
I got you.
Yeah. Probably go to bed now. You're going to pass
Yes.
out real quick.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, again, I would appreciate if you found value in this, I would love for you to like the video, maybe subscribe to the channel, and I will be bringing you more conversations, actually filming one tomorrow with Mr. Adam Smith from Community Church of Columbus that I'm really excited about, and Bria will just get to go to sleep during that one. Yeah.
8:30 bedtime.
8:30 bedtime. Yeah, right when we get the kids down. But really, thank you for being here. Thank you guys for being here so much. I appreciate you, and I would love to know in the comments, what are the things you struggle with? Like we already said, what are the things you argue with your spouse the most about? And maybe even what are some ways that you think you could improve in your parenting, your relationships, or even maybe, I don't know, your church life? We talked a lot about church life.
Yeah.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, I want people to know Jesus more. I want them to love him more, serve him more, and that also means serving his people. And so if you're looking for a church in the Columbus, Indiana area, message me. I'd love to share my thoughts with you on several local churches that I think you could plug into, that I feel are very important. If you're struggling in your relationships, reach out. I can hopefully plug you in with people there too. Maybe that we can... I don't know. I don't think people know where to go to ask questions, and we're by no means professionals or like have everything figured out at all. We just established we don't argue very well, but I think suffering in silence is probably worse. You know, so yeah. Again, appreciate you. Have a good night or day, depending on when you're listening, and I'll see you on the next episode. Got any final words?
No. Let me go to bed.
Let me go to bed. All right. I love you.
I love you.